So today we're moving on from the 60s. As per Giovanni's request, we're covering Soundgarden and 6ix9ine today. And I'm actually pretty glad about that. I don't know much about 60s pop, but I do know much more about 6ix9ine trap music and gangster rap. But enough about me. What's your familiarity with these beats, Blood?
Um, I have quite minimal familiarity with both of them. I read a bit about 6ix9ine on Wikipedia the other day. Not a very
Okay.
pleasant chap outside of his art. He is a known criminal.
He's
Uh,
misunderstood.
that would be one way of putting it. But anyways, I selected these two because there is a shared theme between the video. Do you want to take a guess at what it is?
Okay, I'm gonna guess. I should have come up. Okay, I should have come up with a comedic theme, maybe like racial homogeny or something. But kind of 6ix9ine himself throws that off just a little bit, so I can't go with that. I'm gonna go with just maybe violence. Does that one work?
No, the theme I was thinking of was grotesque faces. Um,
Wow. Okay. Deep.
but yes, so the two songs are "Billy" by 6ix9ine and "Black Hole Sun" by Soundgarden. Um, and so let's first turn to "Billy."
Okay.
And, uh, "Billy," the song, quite bad, I think. Quite bad.
That's
Uh,
your taste. Okay.
and
I'll
so
have to push back on that in time, but I'll
and
let you
so
run with that.
I wanted to ask, why is this song so bad? And I think in answering that, we can lay down ground rules of our own very primitive musical theory without actually
Okay.
having read any actual musical theory.
All
So
right. Hmm. And you
so
want me to begin proposing this musical theory here?
um, you can. I have some ideas of my own,
Okay, yeah,
but
yeah. Please take that away.
please take that away. All right. So, you know, this is something you hear a lot of boomers say. They say, "Oh, rap music glorifies violence, and that's why it's bad." And I think that is
Mm,
a pretty foolish idea.
okay.
Um, and so I'm going to dismiss that one for the reason that that might make sense if the purpose of art was to be morally, socially, or politically instructive, but it's not. Um,
Mm.
and so we need to dig deeper.
So
But
we're dismissing when we say good art, we're not talking about morally good art. We're talking about art that lives up to its own non-moral standards, basically.
yeah, or perhaps not its own standards, but a non-moral standard, anyways.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, but I think the it the the moral standard accidentally gives us a clue.
Mm.
And that clue leads us to it, or leads me anyways, towards the realization that this song is hugely grotesque. Uh, it distills many different, trashy aspects of American culture into its brief 2 minutes.
Well, yeah,
And
you think it's only gonna distill one aspect, and then the second to la or I think the last verse comes out of nowhere, and you get hit with a whole other trashy aspect.
yeah, there's actually so much going
Yeah.
on.
Emphasis on ass, of course.
Yeah, well, in the song itself, there's so much trash, and then the video adds layers to that. Things like dog fights, for example. It's just there's so much going on. And
Okay.
I think it's fair to say that the song is very ugly, and the video itself is ugly. Like with the song by itself, you have 6ix9ine, and he's shouting tunelessly racial slurs and threats over a pretty bad beat, right? And
Okay.
I mean, I know neither of us particularly like rap music. Um, and I think one of the weaknesses that I find with rap music is that it places the actual music, uh, to be secondary, and there's a lot of emphasis on the rap and the lyricism, and let's face it, the actual lyricism of rap does not hold up on its own as poetry, and as we mentioned, or as I said in the last episode, the in songs, the lyrics aren't aren't poetry, they're just the values added to them and how they're sung, and
Mhm.
how that works well with the music. With with this song, half the time there isn't even background music. And when there is, it's like one string instrument playing three different notes on loop, and then like occasional like record stops and things like that.
Mm, I'm not sure about that though, because there are good, like, songs that are very simple, right? Like, "Hot Cross Buns" is a great song.
Is Hot Cross Bun's a
Okay,
great
and
song?
maybe "Hot Cross Buns" isn't the best example, but there are songs that, like, have just 2 chords in them or just 1 chord in them, if we're talking about rock music.
Yeah, but
So,
even minimalism is more complex than it seems. And that's trying to like minimalism tries to distill things down, but even minimalism has a like a higher degree of aesthetic intention.
I just don't know if Blitzkrieg Bop is, like, really more complex than
Okay, but
Billy.
Blitzkrieg Bop is also bad.
Oh,
Um,
okay, see, we're exposing all of your bad taste in music right now.
no, no, no.
Um,
As we'll get to, punk in general is pretty bad, but
okay. We definitely need some building up to that one.
but
That's something we need to build up to, but yeah,
but anyways, in this, he's just shouting over like just a loop of not that much background music just played over and over and over again. And that happens a lot in rap. Even might be even more common than the chorus just being the title of the song shouted or repeated.
choruses are yeah, this is actually a good chorus for rap standards, I think, in this song.
Uh,
Uh,
in that it is more than just the name, I suppose, but that's
yeah,
a pretty low bar.
like, Kendrick Lamar gets away with just saying the name of his song over and over again on the chorus, and then people think he made the best album of all time.
Well,
And
I
Six
don't
Nine
think
is actually well, but, a lot of people do, and 6ix9ine is out here not getting the respect he deserves
that. uh,
for
yeah, let it
actually
let it
saying
be
different
known.
things, like "pop, pop, pop," and "shot, shot, shot."
It's
They're not
actually
even
not.
gonna
It's he
attempt.
says "shot" one more time than "pop." So there's not even like a there's not even a rhythm generated in that way.
Well, that's part of the odd time signature because he's going with something a little progressive.
Uh,
But,
I
eh
I
okay,
would not
well,
say that.
I would say something completely different. I'm gonna diverge here because if I think the separation between poetry and lyric is not as distinct as you're making it, because, I mean, your idol, Bob Dylan, won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
He shouldn't have.
Okay, Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen is I mean, like, you would have to make an argument that he's actually singing on most of his songs, but it's ambiguous whether he's, like, singing or just speaking poetry, basically. So, I'm not too sure that that distinction is very clear. I would go instead to what the content of the lyrics are and say that it's pretty vapid in the case of 6ix9ine.
I would agree that it is vapid, but I think we first I was going to get to why it's so vapid.
Okay. Well,
And
maybe I think we need to jump to that because I think we would get stuck on whether musically Billy is good because I would say it's average musically.
I really
Average or below average, like if I had to quantify this on a website, you know, that systematizes user ratings, I might say 1.5 out of 5 or something, or 2 maybe.
I would go for the half star, just the
Would you
lowest you could.
offer that?
I
Okay.
think this has little to no value in it.
Okay.
And
Well, let's maybe we should go into the lyrics though, because I'm not sure what else. Unless you think there's you can convince me.
well, with I mean, the lyrics do provide a good example of just the absolute vulgarity of this song. Um, and I think it is pretty undeniable that the content of the lyrics of Billy is vulgar.
Yeah.
Uh, with here, let me pull up some choice lines. The I'll
Okay,
try and
make
find
sure these are
the
very
3
choice, all right?
that do not have racial slurs in them.
Thank you.
Let's see, let's
Just
see.
for the record, you're black, right?
Yeah,
Just
I'm actually we're actually both black.
no, well, I'm Hispanic.
Oh, okay,
That's
okay. Just like
so
six
just
nine.
to make yes. Yeah, so I
Uh,
have the patch just like he does.
yeah, like something like this. Dick up in the pussy. Bet that shit get gushy, gushy. She want the whole gang bussin' all in her pussy. That
Yeah,
is
you've never been there, Giovanni?
that is there's just there's this this has no rhythm to it, just for starters. This has almost nothing to it, but let's go through it. It is this I think it is fair to say that this is comically vulgar. Uh,
I didn't
and
even think you got to the good part, but that's all right.
the I want the drip drip while I get my dick licked. Lil sick bitch licking on my dick tip. That one?
Yeah, now you killed that performance. That was good.
Uh,
You should do the intros from now on because you just danced up and down that one. So up and
yeah,
down, interesting choice of words. Anyway,
but
so yeah,
so this anyway, so one of the I think it's pretty pretty obvious this is vulgar. And
yeah,
I think and the actual topics of the lyrics are quite ugly. It's about, you know, murder, uh,
mm,
being in a gang, things like that.
yeah,
And if art is supposed to be beautiful, which I think is a like fairly intuitive that art should be beautiful,
okay.
we then have a dilemma here, which is how do you represent ugly subject matter beautifully? Is art just not supposed to cover topics like violence?
Well, if something is if the grotesqueness and the ugliness of Billy is what makes it bad art, then that's gonna run into a lot of troubles with other sort of uh, maybe not traditionally applauded, but that would apply to like certain horror movies and
Yes.
novels even. And
Yes. That fully. And that is why again, we're not there yet. And
well, hmm,
I
yeah,
have here here is the maximum amount of theory that I will do for music, which is
okay,
read literary theory and then assume it applies. Um, so
okay. Is this Kristeva incoming?
who?
Kristeva. We'll cut this bit art.
No, no. Um, I just didn't hear you. Sorry. Anyways, no.
Okay.
This is a I'm sure I'll mention him more than once, but the great writer Vladimir Nabokov, he wrote a he wrote a series of lectures on European and Russian classics, which are collected in the books Lectures on Literature and Lectures on Russian Literature. And one of them he talks about
Which
um,
obviously applies to 6ix9ine.
yeah, he talks about Madame Bovary at length in one of them, a an excellent book. And so I will quote from that here. Uh, he says, "Oh, before I start this, it should be mentioned at one point he does quote from the book, so there will be a quote in a quote here. Get ready for this
Okay.
these layers." In chapter 6, Emma's childhood is shown in retrospect in terms of shallow Romanesque culture, in terms of the books she reads and what she gets from those books. Emma is a great reader of romances, or more or less exotic novels, of romantic verse. Some of the authors she knows are first rate, such as Walter Scott or Victor Hugo. Others not quite first rate, such as Bernardin de Saint Pierre or Lamartine. But good or bad, this is not the point. His point is that she's a bad reader. She reads books emotionally, in a shallow, juvenile manner, putting herself in this or that female character's place. Flaubert does a very subtle thing. In several passages, he lists all the romantic cliches dear to Emma's heart, but his cunning choice of these cheap images and their cadenced arrangement along the curving phrase produce an effect of harmony and art. In The Convent, the novels she read, quote, were all love, lovers, paramours, persecuted ladies fainting in lonely pavilions, postilions killed at every relay, horses ridden to death on every page, somber forests, heartaches, vows, sobs, tears, and kisses, little skiffs by moonlight, nightingales in shady groves, gentlemen brave as lions, gentle as lambs, virtuous as no one ever was, always well dressed and weeping like tombstone urns. For 6 months, then, Emma, at 15 years of age, sleeked her hands over with the dust of books from old lending libraries. With Walter Scott later on, she fell in love with historical events, dreamed of old chests, guardrooms, and minstrels. She would have liked to live in some old manor house, like those long, wasted chatelaines who, under foils of ogives, pointed arches, spend their days leaning on the stone, chin in hand, watching the approach of a cavalier with white plume galloping on his black horse from the distant fields. End quote. He
And
uses the
double
same
quote?
trick
Oh,
when
no.
listing Homais' vulgarities. The subject may be crude and repulsive. Its expression is artistically modulated and balanced. This is style. This is art. This is the only thing that really matters in books. End quote.
Mm,
And
okay.
we have so now we also have examples of this technique in film, films we've both seen, like in
Mhm.
Eraserhead. The monster baby is quite ugly and repulsive. I think you'd
Mhm.
agree.
Yes.
But the way it's photographed is beautiful. And I think
Mm.
this is finally what explains why Billy and the accompanying video are both so absolutely terrible. And that's because 6ix9ine has no style and thus no substance.
He's a fake gangster, right? We
He
did read that.
he barely even has content or a topic to his lyrics. He
Mm.
just has threats and racial slurs presented as bragging. And that's why it's the song's bad. Not because it's immoral, because it's not possible for art to be immoral, or because it fails to educate you in some way, because that's not the point of art, but because it is artless and without style. And so this artless presentation of vulgarity is just to be vulgar. And so without
Mm.
any style, his presentation of violence is also nothing. And so it's not even glorifying violence because without any style, you can't even do that. The song is simply nothing. And
Mm.
and then in spite of all this, he's proud of this. And bafflingly, and that pride just adds another layer of vulgarity to the whole affair.
Mm. Well, maybe we should move on to Black Hole Sun then,
Oh,
because
no, no. I have more to say about this. I have
okay, is this gonna be published in somewhere or,
well,
besides our podcast, obviously?
no, this is just gonna go on our podcast.
Okay, this is yeah, that's where it's consigned to, unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, okay,
But
well, what else? Yeah.
I need to actually talk about in what ways this video is just completely without style because the video is just as styleless as the song. Like the photography that it is shot
Mm.
with is just so the lighting is so flat and the editing is just clip after clip of shot with this jerky handheld camera mindlessly cut together. And and then on top of that, and this is the real kicker, is you have to look at 6ix9ine's face the whole time. And 6ix9ine is just the ugliest person I've seen in my life. Like no exaggeration here. I don't think I've ever seen someone uglier than 6ix9ine. And you know,
Is that just because he shows his pride in his hair?
yeah, this is what's so ridiculous about it. Like most ugly people, it'd just be mean to make fun of them because they had no choice in the matter. 6 9 did this to himself. He thinks this is something that should have been done to himself. This is what's so truly vulgar about the whole thing. He's proud of just his absolutely terrible character. And as normally you should definitely separate the artist from the art. He has produced no art here. And so himself is just what he's presented. And he, and he, like him himself is also just so terrible. Like these awful teeth that he's got in that are also rainbow colored. He's scarred his face up with tattoos.
Yeah, he's a
This
fan of
man,
Adventure Time, my guy. What are you trying to say about that?
I just so unpleasant. And it makes me think of there's I don't know if you know this, 6ix9ine, he claims to be a Christian. And
Well,
there's a good bit where Nietzsche talks about how even the most repulsive people who behave in the most unchristian way possible still call themselves Christian. And 6ix9ine, perfect example of that.
yeah. Well, you just have to have the faith. That's all you need. But okay, I'm not too sure about some of these statements. I appreciate them and I respect them. But hmm, I'm not too sure about you're saying that there's the grotesque and then there's the presentation of the grotesque, right?
Yeah, and since his presentation is so artless, so without style, it just becomes grotesque itself.
I don't know if you can separate the presentation of the grotesque with from the grotesque though. Like,
Well, we had the example that I read from Madame Bovary, and that all of the cliches that are dear to Emma, also
mm,
grotesque, as that she gets excited by just such vapid content. But the way that Flaubert arranges them has a artistic cadence and flow to it. In 6 9 he has none of that. He
why
just
w-
he
why are
just
romance tropes vapid though?
well
Like why are romance tropes vapid?
well it's just the act of the cliche itself is empty. It's not it's
Mm,
explicitly without art because art is to present a unique viewpoint, a unique look
mhm.
at the world, at least with literature.
But now it's like now introducing that like chronology changes the value of art, I guess. Like the first romance novel is good, but if that novel happened to come second, then it would be less good.
No, because if the first romance novel still may have been without style. I don't know what the first romance novel was.
I'm just saying, well, you're saying that the cliches are vapid and bad and ugly, but that's only the case because they are not unique, right?
Well, they're both not unique, and the presentation of them in the cliched romance is is also styleless.
But my question was why? Why is it okay? Well, maybe we shouldn't get bogged down in that. But just to sort of summarize, the issue is that you're saying the presentation of the grotesque in Billy is without style.
Yes.
I mean, it's a simple video, I guess, but mm, it certainly
I
has a
mean,
lot of
just
energy.
just skip to like 1 minute and 12 seconds in, for example. This
Yeah, I'm seeing
this has
that.
some of the most flat lighting I've seen in photography.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it's
It's
like
dark out, so they just have a floodlight on them.
yeah, exactly. Like, surely you must have seen movies that are shot at night that have beautiful nighttime photography.
Yeah, I don't think this is going with that kind of cinematography, though. I think it's supposed to demonstrate the energy of the song in the video, and or at least it's supposed to provide the same sort of level of threat or coolness. Because this is what I'm saying. This is where I'm actually gonna diverge from you in a more way that's based on the music video. Because I think the lyrics of the song are so vague that they basically mean nothing. It's just like expressions of desires for violence, basically. It's only when you introduce the music video and the like swaths of people around him and the dancing and the edits that suddenly this is posed as something that's positive, right?
I don't even know if the video I don't think the video manages to pose it as positive. It shows that the people in the video think that it's positive. But since the video is so amateurly and poorly put together, it doesn't even have a any kind of
It
uh,
undercuts its own
yeah,
advertisement.
it doesn't even have a purpose.
But
It just shows things.
But
And it
people
shows
are based though. Like people get convinced by actual advertisements. I think they would get convinced by this too, just because of the volume of people in it. Like when you have a celebrity in it, you have seemingly a lot of people in it. You have so you know it's something that's popular and it's liked by someone who's a celebrity. So this sort of culture, being a blood is cool. You know, I think that does glorify it.
I think people would take it as glorifying it, but just because people read it as such doesn't mean that that's actually what it's saying. And so, yes,
Um,
people
I
are based,
suppose.
and people like this,
I don't know if you can
amazingly.
say that one trumps the other, right? So I'm saying that you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of people, and you have celebrity power. These are sort of things that are adding to its glorification, right? And you're saying, but it's shot disgustingly, and it's not uh like the cinematography and the lighting isn't very good. And you're just saying that that undercuts the more attractive elements. But why can't I just say that the more attractive elements overpower the bad cinematography, right? It just depends on the viewer, really, which one is more powerful. What's a more powerful influence, right?
Well, yeah, this is the point. This would only appeal to someone who is shallow enough to already find this appealing.
No, well, you might not find the gang life appealing on its own, but then have it seem more appealing if you're someone who is influenced by celebrities or influenced by music is just a very influential thing, right? Or you're influenced by something seeming popularity. There are a lot of people in the music video. It seems to be a popular thing, right? So those things might take someone who's not innately interested in this sort of thing and then push them towards it, right?
Um, I don't think that this would push someone towards this unless they already found the things within it appealing to some extent.
Maybe. I
Like,
mean,
this
I'm not gonna say that this is gonna like it didn't turn me into a thug, right? It's just there's some number of people who were previously on the fence about the gang life and now might find it more appealing as a result. Like whether or not that tips them into like becoming a blood is something that's sort of up in the air, right? But I'm not right. That sort of depends on their starting point, I guess, right?
yeah, their
But I
starting point
think
would have to be one of delusion, though, for this because there is, as mentioned, there are so many layers of trash depicted in this. Like, it is just nothing but trash from start to finish. And
Ye Okay.
like so to the where someone would have to watch this, and as it the video itself is just styleless, they would have to think that the trash is already good. They would have to not be put off by the vulgarity to be convinced.
Okay, I
Same.
see what you mean. I'm just saying that this
It's
can
like when people say that someone did a school shooting because they played Call of Duty, like it, that's pretty obviously not true. It was the person was like if Call of Duty was the actual impetus that got someone to
uh,
shoot up a school, they would have had to been deranged already.
yeah, I see what you mean, sort of. I think, like, joining a gang is less deranged than shooting up a school, but
Uh,
I would
to
say
what degree? Like how less deranged is it to join the Bloods than it is to shoot up a school? Like in both, you're joining a group that is like you're doing something that is known for violent activity with the understanding that people are going to get hurt.
well, I mean, if you gangs can accord social status, financial stability, that sort of thing, right? Whereas shooting up a school doesn't really do anything that a sane person would find advantageous, right?
Well, it gives them it means they're remembered, which is I think a
Mm,
a big reason why people do it. They feel like no one sees them or cares about them, and so then
okay, well,
they shoot
I
up the
mean,
school so they can be remembered. And so for the
yeah, but
it's still I suppose the underlying desire of trying to gain some kind of status that is memorable. If you're gonna call that a sane desire, even though the expression of it is insane in both instances.
yeah, I think one can be much more morally dubious, which sort of makes it more insane to pursue compared to the other one. But I maybe we should digress from that because or maybe this was not a good digression because just to stick to the music video, if I don't think having style is necessary, like having cinematic style is necessary to for something to serve as an advertisement, right? Like I don't think Bounty commercials have style and are art, right? But they still convince people to purchase their product, right?
Yeah, they
The
they
people
do.
who otherwise wouldn't have, right? Just you can't just say, "Oh, well, these are people who are already prone to advertising, so they're already delusional, so they're already practically bounty buyers," right? That's not really how it works, right?
Well, it's the person who sees some poorly made advertisement, like all of them out there, and who then actually ends up buying something. They
Yeah.
were already looking to buy something. Like maybe someone's looking for some product, and then they see an advertisement for that product, and they're like, well, that's a convenient place to get it. Or they're someone who's such a bad watcher of film that
Mhm.
they become swayed and convinced by something without any artistic value whatsoever.
Mhm.
And in that case, they'd already have to be a shallow person. So the
Yeah, I
person
guess.
who watches this and is swayed by it is already shallow, a shallow watcher of film.
Yes. But does that I guess maybe we're going into the moral argument, right? But if you hold I tried to avoid dropping it by name, but if you hold the Platonic view that good art is morally good, this I think is still it depends then what your moral theory is, right? But if you're like a consequentialist, then this can still be bad art because there are enough dumb people out there that it successfully advertises gang life to them, right?
But I do not hold the moral view.
Yeah, that's fine. So then just I guess it's your view is ultimately that there's not enough style to transform the grotesque in the lyrics and the music into something beyond grotesqueness.
Yeah.
Okay. I I don't have a solid view on aesthetics, but I feel like something that's sort of important to at least the aesthetic experience is catharsis. Um, and I don't know who this is cathartic for and how it really
Yeah,
works to
it's
try and bring out catharsis in anyone.
I mean, I watched this several times in preparation for this episode, and
And there,
each time
you
I was
have an overwhelming feeling of catharsis by the last time.
no, each time I was just more disgusted with it from start to finish. Just just it just made me so unhappy. Uh, and
Ye-
and it's because I mean, we should really get into the specifics of what is so trashy about this, because that it's like comically so. It's like someone took the platonic form of trash to bring Plato back and just managed to bring it into our world. Uh, like
Yes.
like and I think it's also this is also pretty good evidence that like sometimes people say, oh, like accusations of being trashy are classist. I think not, as 6ix9ine is the trashiest one here, and he's a millionaire, and that really just is a big
That's
part.
not really okay.
And this is a big part of American culture nowadays. Even the richest people, often the richest people, are among the most
Well,
vapid and trashy. Like
that's like
reality
new money
television stars.
new money versus established money is like generally seen as the former being trashy because it's like people who are traditionally of a lower class suddenly get money and so they spend it on trashy lower class things is like that's that's the nuance there that I think would have to be considered if you as part
Yeah,
of the critique that
I mean
hating
that's
trash is classist. It's classist in that
but even
people who are historically wealthy are the ones whose tastes are considered non-trashy, and people who are historically not wealthy, their tastes are considered trashy.
but I would say that the historically wealthy people are often equally trashy, just with a different expression. Like you the historically wealthy people, you would not expect them to be in this crowd here. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah,
But you would expect them to do other things. You'd expect them to be more um like Emma Bovary and Madame Bovary,
yeah,
trashy in that way.
yeah, I
And
guess.
and it's really the whole thing is this materialist mindset that both both causes 6ix9ine to express it this way, and causes historically trashy people to express it in a different but equally vulgar way.
What's the material like them being materialistic, or are we introducing Marx now?
No, them being materialistic.
Okay, thank
No.
goodness.
Marx
Um,
no, I do not. Marx's uh, literary analysis is of the most trashy and vulgar sort.
okay. Well, I what I see is a music video that doesn't transform is not transformative. That's what I will agree to. It doesn't it takes rather ambiguous to the point of not being cathartic really anymore. Um lyrics and then does nothing to make them more specific. And I guess it does in a sense make it more specific in that it makes it clear that he's talking about gang violence. But that
Oh,
is something that I would so in my view where catharsis is important, I would think that very few people find gang violence to be cathartic. um, except for
Well,
maybe some people who are in gangs. And even if you then introduce like, so catharsis is kind of like a subjective standard because it's a matter of like what people actually get from your art. But if you also like introduce some objective element where like it's important for people to get catharsis from objectively good things, like maybe even morally speaking, then even like the 1% of people who do find catharsis in gang violence, as soon as you introduce some objective element, it's probably going to negate the aesthetic value of that experience too. So that's why I would say that this music video is bad.
um, I guess what I'd have to say to that is I think we are describing the same symptom, just slightly differently, which is you're saying it's so ambiguous, and I'm saying the ambiguity is because there is no style that would give it a direction or purpose.
I guess. I mean, I think you can still have good lighting in this. I mean, that's sort of the question is where does form bleed into like content and narrative? Like where does form and style begin to shape the actual story that's being told, right? And if you just introduced better lighting, I wouldn't be like, "Oh yeah, this is a very stylized music video," right? If the editing was a bit more like less sort of just choppy all over the place, if there were some fades, if the Beatles editor showed up and dissolved a bit, I would say maybe it's a bit more stylized, but I would still find it lacking some sort of narrative or purpose or theme beyond just a love for violence, basically.
I I think that the style and substance are inseparable. And I mean, part of what's bad is this is really poorly directed. And so when you say if
Well,
it was just
they
like,
did pretty well splice in shots of police cars and stuff like that to make it look like that is happening in the same environment. That directing and editing, I will give to them.
yeah, that's the one good part of this video, I suppose,
Yeah,
if we must find a good part. Um,
yeah.
but I think if you lit this in a more stylized way and made the images themselves more attractive, then it would actually the actual meaning of it would be changed, where it would then actually be trying to make violence seem attractive and this kind of violence.
Yeah, I
Whereas
guess, but I
like
would
this
find that yeah.
like this without that, it's not even doing that because it it just because it takes these just actions that are like ugly in and of themselves and doesn't present them with any kind of style.
But if that was the case, then on so many other aesthetic standards, this the music video would also be terrible. It would be morally terrible because it's now, in all senses, advertising something objectionable. It would be it'd be untruthful in a sense, in that it would be representing something grotesque as beautiful. So it'd be false, it would be immoral, it would
Well,
be I think it would still be just as narrowly cathartic to just a very select number of people.
I'd have to disagree with you there because that would because in because I don't think art can be immoral. And
I'm just
so
yeah. So you're
even if
saying this would be better art if it was a better advertisement of violence?
yes,
But what
and
if it doesn't yeah, sorry, go ahead.
for the simple reason that uh, you need to trust that people can do this, even if many can't. When making art, you shouldn't cater towards the lowest common denominator. You should trust that people are able to distinguish between fiction and reality. And so if you have fiction that untruthfully glorifies violence, I don't see what the issue would be of that. And I don't see how you could have an issue with that. I mean, you play first person shooters. Do you think actually shooting people in real life would be fun? Like of
Um,
course not. and that's because you're able to recognize the distinction between a stylized depiction of violence and what violence would actually be like in real life, because fiction just isn't reality.
Yeah, but I think what I would struggle with is when something depicts something as true, and I know that it is false, it's very difficult for that to be a valuable aesthetic experience to me, you know? Like, in
I
in
don't
video
understand it.
games in video games, it's not how to put
Like,
this?
do you like fantasy? Because fantasy takes something that's not true and asks you to treat it as though it is while the story goes on.
Well, there's certain, like, levels of truth, I guess, right? Like, if someone takes out a magic ring, I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, well, that's not true," right? But I would understand it as, like, an allegory for something, right? And it can be true allegorically or symbolically, right?
Okay,
Whereas yeah.
but that why so so the Lord of the Rings would only be good if the allegory that it's
Well,
got, if it
first of
even
all, we know
has one.
Tolkien doesn't believe in
Yeah,
allegory,
Tolkien doesn't
so
even believe in allegory.
yeah, but no one believes him when he says that, so, like,
But if
you
something
know,
if art is then only good because it has an allegory that's true.
it's not sorry, it's not only good because it has an allegory that's true, it's that when it depicts something that doesn't exist or is false, it is still true in some other sense, I guess.
Yeah,
It's true in
it's
a sense, it
true
speaks
within the internal logic of the work of art. And
mm,
so likewise, like in in Overwatch, when you win by shooting
please,
the
give me
bad
something
guys.
that I can understand, thank you.
Yeah, in Overwatch, when you win by shooting the bad guys off the checkpoint or the
Yeah, when I
cart or
scatter my
whatever.
bullets and I get them off of their ride, yeah.
Yeah, then, like, it's true within the internal logic of Overwatch that that's what you're supposed to do is shoot the enemy and that they then
I
come
don't
back right
find
away.
Overwatch an aesthetically rewarding game, though,
You don't find
right?
why
I
do you
don't find it
play it?
aesthetically rewarding because of its excitement factor. Like, I don't find, like, I don't find playing any sport to be, like, aesthetically enjoyable, you know? Like, when I hit a homer in real life, I'm not like, "Wow, that was beautiful." I'm more
People
just
say that all the time to describe good plays in sports, though.
to describe watching them maybe, but I don't partake in it for its beauty, you know?
Okay, but when you're playing the sport, that's more like you're, um, creating the art in a sense,
Okay. Okay,
and
sure, but
when you're playing Overwatch, since that's uh, a game that the
fictitious.
developers have, like, crafted for you, and it is fiction, it's different. I mean, this is
Um,
part of why Overwatch isn't that great of a game because it doesn't have a hugely aesthetically rewarding aspect to it, but if you take something like a better game like
like
Portal
Destiny,
2.
just keep it in my realm of
No, I haven't
expertise
played
here.
Destiny, and Destiny what I have played of Destiny is bad. So, but
Aesthetically
take
speaking?
it's bad mechanically speaking, which is
Well,
probably
the loot system, you can't give it a knock on aesthetics because its loot system is too grindy.
I will. But
Okay,
anyways, like
sure.
a game um that's, like, easier to talk about from a more artistic standpoint, I suppose, would be, like, single player campaign games where there's not the unpredictability of playing against other people also added in. Um,
Okay, yeah, yeah, but just to sort of return to what my gripe with the video would be still, if it was aesthetically pleasing in some sense, in that if it was stylistically sound, right? Is that I think it would still be depicting maybe it's sort of the prejudice that people come into experiencing art with, but I think most people at least assume that art is trying to depict something true, right?
Um, if they do, they'd be wrong for doing that.
Well, it needs to depict something true, and at least that maybe abstract art could challenge this, but that it's something that is at least true to the artist. In that, like, if 6ix9ine made a more stylized version of this, I'd be led to think that 6ix9ine has at least at one point in his life, or whoever directed the music video, seen violence in this glorious light, you know? Maybe that doesn't mean violence actually is glorious, but, like, he has he has seen it in that sense before, and that's so it's got a bit of subjective truth to it, at least, right?
I don't buy this.
Really? How else, like, would you then assume that it's by accident that because I think, like, just based on psychology, like, to make like, again, abstract art aside, to, like, make art that depicts violence in a certain way, the artist, I think, has to have at least thought about violence in that way before.
I mean,
Otherwise,
they'd
unless it's just
yes, well,
luck, right?
they'd need to think about how they're going to depict it. And I suppose they need to think about depicting whatever they're going to depict in a certain way, of course, but they that doesn't necessarily mean that they view the actual thing that way. Like it could be the
Yeah.
case, but
Or they just thought about it in that way once, I guess. So, I guess I'm sort of defeating my own point here in that there is subjective truth still in that, like, this is a way violence can be seen. But I don't know, I would just find it very difficult um, to aesthetically enjoy something that is so removed from the truth in any sense. Like, it's removed allegorically, symbolically, metaphorically, literally.
that is, I think, a weakness with you as a viewer of art then. You might
I
just be a
don't
bad
understand,
viewer of art.
but I don't understand why what value I would get from experiencing art that has no relation to the truth, right?
Well, you would gain the value of aesthetic enjoyment.
But what am I aesthetically enjoying? It's nothing about reality.
You're
It's nothing
no,
about truth.
you're not enjoying anything about reality. You're enjoying because this all fiction is fictional. If your enjoyment of it had to do with reality, that would be quite shallow. You're enjoying that so much work and talent went into crafting something that had such a wonderful expression of something non-existent that someone was able to formulate something completely imaginary and and like create a version of it in
But I'm
through
still
whatever
when
medium of
you
their
broaden
choice.
this to all fiction, that's not really my point because I'm saying, like, yeah, I'm sure, like, maybe Taxi Driver never like, that is fiction, right? But it still reflects truth about human psychology, masculinity, all that sort of stuff, right?
Okay, but Taxi Driver isn't good because it has a good message for you to take away from it. It's
Well,
good.
it's not just the message, but, like, if Travis Bickle acted in a completely unhuman manner and had no, like, psychological relatability whatsoever, it would be a much worse movie.
Well, it would just be a completely different movie. And so this is
I
kind of
guess, yes.
a like just a weird um like just kind of speculating because that it
Well,
would just
I
be
think
such a different movie. But in the movie that currently exists, it's not good because it says something true about human psychology or because it teaches you anything. It's good because the artistic expression of it is good. Like it's good uh that Martin Scorsese was able to see exactly how he would depict smoke clouds billowing up around the taxi and it's good because of the desaturated color palette as Travis Bickle shoots people towards the end.
So what I just don't understand in your theory is where the value of aesthetic enjoyment comes from. Because
It comes from sharing that sharing with the creator the enjoyment that they were able to find the beautiful expression for uh this fictional world they've created.
I'm just okay, I'm not sure if that's sort of passing the buck to say, "Oh, what's aesthetically valuable is beauty," right? Like, is that any more vague than saying what is aesthetically valuable is good art? Like, that seems just as vague to say, "Oh, well, beauty is just what is valuable," right?
Well, then you just need
'Cause then I could
to
just ask, "What's beauty?" Right?
well, I can't just describe to you the abstract concept of beauty, but I can talk about the specifics in any given specific work of art. Like in Taxi
But
Driver,
how?
what
H like, how I can't really hold you account if you say, "Well, I can't tell you what beauty is," I can just point to different things which I think are beautiful. Like, what gives you more credit to say that than me saying, "Well, I don't think that is beautiful. I think truth is beautiful, and I think
well,
falsity is not beautiful," right?
it would it would depend on what you're looking at, I suppose. If you're talking about like visual beauty, that
Mhm.
is yeah, that is would just be subjective because it's not like you can say this eyeball is ideal.
Like, in terms of what just generates the most pleasure from looking at a certain arrangement of colors?
Yeah, like if unless there was like an ideal eyeball that you could say, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is the one that perceives the best." Without that, you can't say, "Oh, this color palette is better than this color palette." But there is um like I suppose a more typical human eye. But again, that would just be an appeal to popularity. So I would
Yeah.
say beauty is then uh subjective.
Okay. Well,
At least
I
visual beauty and aural beauty, which is what matters when talking about music videos.
oh, true. Well, but then I guess as part of my subjective criteria, I feel like a level of truth is necessary for something to be beautiful.
But why?
Because because hmm, question. I think
As far as I can see, unless the point of it is to be instructive, which it's not, then truth shouldn't matter.
well, I think maybe it just gets better the more truthful it is, I guess. In that it's in addition to whatever qualities it already has, it also has the quality of like speaking to people's own experience.
So, but how I this just doesn't make any sense to me. How could it being more truthful make it better? Like would then Taxi Driver should be bad because its depiction of New York is so hallucinatory and dreamlike, which is not
Well, I'm
truthful.
not I'm not talking too literally, right? I'm also saying symbolically, allegorically, metaphorically truthful, right? So like if it's, Martin Scorsese depicts it as with a lot of contrast and there's a lot of darkness in his night sky, right? That's true to someone with the psychology of Travis Bickle, who is someone who reflects a real psychology that exists in a lot of people, at least at first, right? But
So,
what I'm trying to say is, I mean, I could say, I like if we're just saying beauty is subjective, and for me, a subjective standard is that it has to speak
well,
to truth in some way. I could
I'm
say sort of
saying
the same thing to you. Like, why would having more like less flat light be more beautiful. Like, just because your eyeball finds that more pleasurable, like,
Well, yes, that would be the reason.
that is well, that is very subjective too, right? And, like, sort of, you know,
Well,
runs
yeah,
into its
it's
like, is
it's
pleasure the only thing that makes art good?
well, what else would there be besides aesthetic pleasure that makes art good?
Well, like truth and stuff like that, right? Like, I don't think pleasure is the only
Well,
good
if
in
the
life, right?
no, no, well, this is the thing. As art isn't real life, there can be goods that exist in life that do not exist in art.
But when you make beauty subjective, it doesn't just exist in art anymore. It's also existing in the perceiver, right?
Well,
So if we're
exists
saying, yeah,
it still exists in the art as far as
the
the
quality
actual,
does,
like, colors and whatnot.
but its quality of being pleasurable doesn't exist in itself, right? Because that pleasurable refers to the receiver of the pleasure, right?
Yeah, and the reason for that is, I mean, people find certain things beautiful probably for evolutionary reasons. So
Maybe.
that's that's your eye evolved to be the way it
Yeah,
is,
yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
and so that's why you recognize certain colors and certain colors are invisible to you. But with in accordance to the eye as it exists, there are like visual compositions that are more beautiful in relation, like in or not, yeah, objectively to the standard of
Mhm.
the eye.
Yes. Which
And
is something that is subjective though, right?
yeah, and that not everyone has the exact same eye, but most people have
Yeah.
a close enough eye that,
Yeah.
like, aside from like people with seeing issues, I suppose, they
Yeah.
would recognize the lighting is flat in this.
Yes, but that's why I think it's not just based on the eye, but it's also based on the valuing in that the flatness of the lighting is gonna be more important to other people and less important to other people, right?
Yeah.
So, that's I don't know how we got here, but I feel like I'm still right. So,
Well,
I feel like I can
but
yeah.
you haven't explained why truth is good. Like, I've explained
Well,
finding, like, an image beautiful is ultimately a subjective experience, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong or for anything.
I th
But
yeah.
and I can still then say it should, like, an image, like visual art should still be beautiful to the standard of the eye. And if you wanna
Okay.
say, "Well, I find truth important," why is truth important in art? Like, with visual art, it seems pretty intuitive that being well composed visually is important.
Yes, but that's still something that isn't a clear standard because that's subjective. Like, what is well composed is subjective.
Yeah, so but do you have
So,
a reason for valuing truth? Like, what is the underlying desire for your art to have some semblance of truth in it?
the uh, I guess a lot of things. One, I think it does contribute to the pleasure people experience of it. Like, all else held the constant, it contributes to that. And so it's more
But
pleasurable. Yeah.
but why? Like, I I certainly don't find something more or less enjoyable because it corresponds to truth more or less.
Uh,
And,
really?
like,
Like, when you are less when like, I'm just saying all else held constant, right? So I'm not working this isn't my strongest statement that something needs truth to be beautiful or to be aesthetically valuable. I'm just saying truth adds to aesthetic value.
okay, but what I'm saying is truth can only add to aesthetic value if you think that art is supposed to be teaching you something.
No, if you can think that it's pleasurable, that's enough, right? Some of the time, at least. Like, it is that's not an absolute, but, like, if something speaks to your own experiences, so, like, to your own the truth that it speaks to a truth about your own perception, so, like, a subjective truth, then that is more likely to be pleasurable for you,
Well,
right?
yeah, but
That says nothing about teaching anyone.
then you're just demanding that the art just, like, be something you agree with to begin with.
Um, no, I'm just saying all else held constant, right? Like, you could end up getting more pleasure from like, my point would still stand if I said, "Oh, yeah, like, art did teach you that you were wrong about something, and that gave you a lot of pleasure too." So it doesn't have to agree you don't have to agree with it.
Okay, but then it's still trying to teach you something then, which is why? Why if, like,
Okay,
here,
maybe
let
I'm
me
not being clear,
rephrase.
but I'm just saying, like, let me just rephrase this. So, the if if pleasure is what is aesthetically valuable, like, if deriving pleasure from things that you experience is
Well, it
what,
it depends on the type of pleasure. It needs to be specifically aesthetic pleasure,
compared to what kind of other pleasure?
compared to, uh, deriving
Sexual?
no, I suppose that would be, well, because the way that sex is portrayed also is, like, relies on, aesthetics. As you can see, he
Okay.
portrays sex in a very vulgar manner in this.
Yeah.
A very aesthetically valueless manner.
Yes. I'm just okay. So if part of aesthetic pleasure is if pleasure is part of aesthetic value, I'm saying that you can get pleasure from something reflecting your own truth. Does that make sense?
But yeah, it makes sense that you could do that, but I'm saying that would just be a shallow way to do so. To just look for a character that you emotionally identify with, just like Emma Bovary.
Well, that's I I'm not saying that this is like the sole way of driving aesthetic pleasure, but it certainly adds to it, right? Like, if you are, what's the, Spike Lee movie, that everyone raves about?
Do the right thing.
About yeah, Do the Right Thing, right? So that one's about, uh, like, a disadvantaged Black neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
All else held constant, I think I am not going to derive as much aesthetic experience as someone who comes from that kind of neighborhood.
Yeah, and I mean,
I don't think my
that's
level
one
of
of the
empathy is that
that's one of
capable
the
enough.
problems with Do the Right Thing, though. Like, Do the Right Thing, it's a good movie, but it's not a great one, because Spike Lee himself is a terrible actor, and he casts himself as the main character. And yet, in spite of that, people pretend the movie is amazing specifically because it represents the moral teachings they want it to. This is this is
Okay, but
this is
if you
perfectly
ignore
proving my
the
point. That this
shortcomings of
is
the
a
example, well, no, because I invoked the example in one sense, and now you're responding to it in a different sense. I'm saying that my aesthetic enjoyment is going to be less than the aesthetic enjoyment of someone who relates to that more, right?
okay, but when someone's just doing it because they relate to it, then it's not actually aesthetic anymore. They're imposing their own criteria of what characters uh or just they're saying a
But
character should just be like
you're
me.
no, you're understanding this too, like, intentionally, I think. Like, when I'm talking about the aesthetic experience someone receives, I'm not saying that this is like a view that they hold and then they check to see if it reflects their own beliefs, and then they're like, "Oh, it does? Okay, then I enjoy this." I'm saying it's more like, um, it's less intentional. It's more just an immediate reaction sort of thing in that, like, if some like, so take, The Way of Kings, right? Which apparently, supposedly, represents depression, right? Someone
Sure.
who is depressed is going to find that more cathartic than someone who is not, right? That is what my point is, and I don't think that's shallow to derive more pleasure from it because you too are depressed. It's just that it speaks to you more and you find it more cathartic because it is something that speaks to you, right?
But why is it like in the instance of this book, which I mean, it's hard to talk about this book because I haven't read it. Uh,
Yeah.
but I've seen like examples from the text shared around, and there are sentences like he felt a bad feeling, I think was one of them. Like
Yeah.
at that when a character is so shallowly characterized, when with a sentence that's so completely artless, you would just be wrong to identify with that character
Why?
because because again there's no style there.
You can only identify to with stylized people?
Well, you shouldn't your value shouldn't just be in identifying with the characters to begin with.
Well
You can't identify with the world at all because the guy has failed to create a world. He's failed to at least with
well,
that
but
sentence.
okay,
There might be better
here's
ones. I haven't read the
you're
book.
I think maybe we need to phrase this differently because what's going on right now is I'm phrasing an example, and you're saying, well, that's actually a bad, valueless piece of art. And so, thus, anyone who derives pleasure from it is only doing so because they relate to it, which does seem shallow, right? But I'm saying that, and maybe that's the best way to put your argument. But I'm saying that, like, if you have something that is already aesthetically pleasurable, right? Uh, and then you add and then the perceiver is also someone who has had a similar experience or sees the world in a similar way. They will likely find added catharsis from that, right?
Yeah, I suppose they would just accidentally, but I think that's the part that isn't valuable, and that's the part that you should move away from.
Mm, so why
When you
is
go for analysis of art, you shouldn't like here's an example. Like
but
imagine
not everyone consumes art to analyze it though, right? Like you can have a valuable aesthetic experience without the intent of analyzing its worth, right?
well, I think you should analyze it as you're perceiving it
Why why? Like
because that's then a you get a deeper perception of it, a more accurate one.
but then why is accuracy important? Like, this is just getting back to now you're saying the truth is important? Like, in
No,
when
I'm
you
not saying
experience
real truth is important. I'm saying the truth within the work of art is important, which may or may not correspond to real truth.
but why I don't know why the truth of the art is important,
Well,
other than
let
the
me give
fact
you an
that
example.
yeah.
Imagine there's someone who they when they were uh, a child, their parents took them to an art gallery, and
Mhm.
then they got lost in the art gallery, right? And now every
Yeah.
time they go into an art gallery to see paintings, they get nervous. And
Okay.
now if they say, "Oh yes, this painting makes me nervous," and they're talking about like a what's the Monet painting of the one of them of
Water
the like
lilies?
house that he was in, and it's like a house with gardens, which
Okay.
is a painting, and the qualities within that painting wouldn't make you nervous, but this person gets nervous through their own because of their own past experiences, and those experiences are clouding their vision, getting in the way of them actually engaging with the painting. And so, likewise, if someone uh, reads a book and they like it more just because the character happens to share features with them, that it's just the same. It's not actually engaging with the book. It's just trying to turn the book into them.
Mm. well, I think it's a more difficult sell when you have a positive experience with something than a negative one. Like, I agree, like, if you have some experience that now turns you off of all art, that's definitely bad, and you should be told that you're not really seeing the art for how it is, and maybe that way you could unlock aesthetic pleasure for you again, right? But I think what I'm trying to say is that um, I don't think that finding the correct interpretation of a piece of art, A, if that's something that can be done, and B, if that's something that's important, right?
Well, I why would you I mean, I suppose if we wanted to argue about whether it can be done or not, that would take way too long. So let's not get into
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I
But
guess my question
I'm
is what's wrong with someone who sees art that you think is bad and then has aesthetic pleasure from it?
well, it might not necessarily be wrong. It depends on why they're doing it. If they're doing it for a reason that is analogous to, oh, when I was a child, this happened to me, and it reminds me of that. That would be a bad reason because that's not contained within the art itself.
Okay.
And
But
so and so I don't see how you can
that
accept.
applies to everything in my example, right? I said someone who sees bad art and thinks it's good, right?
Yeah,
Like for whatever reason they think it's good, it's not going to be contained in the art because the art is bad.
yeah, okay, so then they would just be wrong to do it.
Okay, yeah, and that's something that I don't think that negates the aesthetic pleasure or value that they derive from
Well,
the
if the
art.
art is bad, then they're not getting pleasure from the aesthetics of the artwork. They're getting it from their own experience. I don't see how you can accept that it would be wrong for
Well,
someone to dislike paintings because they got lost in an art gallery, but it would be right for them to like paintings because after their first time to the art gallery, their mother bought them ice cream. Those
mm,
both come from the same spot, and unless you accept both of those as being equally valid, you need to deny them both as being equally invalid.
because so far the only argument you've given really, from what I can see, is that aesthetic value comes mainly from taking pleasure in certain features of art, right?
Yeah, and those features need
But
to be contained within the art.
but I just don't see why it is necessary and why it's not just arbitrary that the features need to be in the art.
Well,
Because what is the value that comes from the connection between the perceiver and the art?
so the the perceiver, I'm going to argue, does not bring any value themselves. The artist creates it all. And the perceiver's job is to to just get the correct perception from that by examining the art as closely as they can. And if the artist did a good job, that action will be aesthetically pleasurable. And if they did a bad job, like 6ix9ine did, that action will not be aesthetically pleasurable.
Okay,
And so,
but that your description there seems to have two kind of not necessarily potentially contradictory elements because you're saying that good art is something that portrays the artist's experience to
no,
the
no,
perceiver.
not their experience, just whatever they're trying to create.
Okay, so it it communicates whatever they're trying to create to the perceiver, right? And then you're also saying that it has to be done in a certain way that elicits pleasure in the viewer, right? And I'm just saying one I can sort of see making sense. If you just think pleasure is good, then it makes sense that it needs to elicit pleasure in the perceiver. And in the other sense, sort of like if you think truth is good, well, maybe not truth, but but,
Well,
hmm, maybe I bungled that one a little bit. But I like, do you see how there's sort of two elements there? Like, there's there's the receiving that in a positive, pleasurable way, and also receiving it accurately. And I can see the reason why you need it to be pleasurable, because a lot of people think pleasure is good and like makes people well off. But I don't see why you have to see it truthfully.
So, well, the reason why you need to see it in accordance with what it
Mhm.
is because otherwise you're not actually engaging with the work of art itself. So, in the example of the person getting lost
I
uh,
see what you're saying.
in the the art gallery, when they go and perceive paintings, and it just makes them nervous because they remember being lost in the art gallery. They're not engaging with the painting. They're just getting caught up in their own like past
Right, yeah, yeah.
emotional lives. And it's
It's not even an aesthetic experience, really. It's just a
yeah,
pleasurable experience that happens to instrumentally in some way involve art, but
yeah,
it's not in any really centrally causal way. Okay,
yes.
I see that, but I also am sort of skeptical of that because then it seems like why do we then it seems like aesthetic pleasure and aesthetic value is sort of interchangeable with just pleasure generally. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that person isn't getting aesthetic pleasure, but they're getting a different kind of pleasure, which is just as good,
Well,
right? Like someone who
yeah.
gets
So I
catharsis
mean, I don't I don't
from
think it would
bad
be
art.
I don't think it would be like wrong in any way to gain like some kind of pleasure that like because like to go and look at paintings because it reminds you of the time your mother bought you ice cream after you saw paintings. It's
Yeah.
just the point is that's not what the art itself is doing. So it'd be wrong to say that the art is good for that
Mm,
reason.
okay. I see that. I think the question is then like how much of a causal role does art need to play for it to be considered uh for that experience to be considered an aesthetic experience. You know what
Well,
I mean? Like if
I suppose ideally it would be a 100% causal role. Um,
mhm,
I don't know how possible that is. And to try and work that out right now would be like would take a really long time and would probably just be branching on major problems in
yeah,
the field of aesthetics.
yeah, I guess. I'm just thinking when art moves me the most, it tends to be in some kind of tragedy that I can yeah, not comedy. Wow, isn't that funny? Um,
Yeah. So
that
again, this is I think
that I
a
can
new
relate to, and
problem.
it seems silly to watch a and we'll probably get to one of these. Maybe we should have gotten change of plans.
Well,
Let's watch a no, I'm kidding. But like it seems sort of strange for me to watch something that's like political or something and like is deeply moving for me, some sort of art that is political and I find moving and be like, "Oh, that wasn't aesthetic pleasure," or "That wasn't a very good music video," even though it played a causal role in moving me, you know?
well,
That's that's why
I
I would
mean,
sort of struggle. It might not be a 100%, but the reason I am inclined to not say that it needs to be a 100% causal role is because of just typical experiences like that, you know?
well, I mean, part of the like one of the what I think undeniable takeaways from my view is that the political realm of art is irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm
And
talking
and
about
that
that insofar as it affects the perceiver, like the experience the perceiver has.
well, I mean, yeah, it doesn't
And
matter
not the
in the
consequence it not like the political consequences it has on the perceiver, like it makes them go out and join a gang. I just mean like the emotional experience.
Yeah, it shouldn't affect the, well, I don't think the political aspect of art should affect anything with your judgment of it because, again, it's not supposed to be teaching you something.
No, I just meant like a something that has political content that then moves you in part because you think it reflects the truth, say, for example, something that you think is not part of the art itself, right?
Yeah, that would be a bad reason to think that art is good.
Yeah, but if you watch a music video and listen to it and then have some sort of cathartic experience from that, I would struggle to say that that is not that is not an instance of aesthetic value or aesthetic pleasure.
Well,
But
it would depend on why you get the
yeah,
we're just
but
talking.
like it's yeah, I
How about
guess.
we move on to Soundgarden?
Well, I think what we can conclude is that we think this is a bad music video
Yeah, oh
in
yes.
that
First
but
let's give our ratings, I guess.
because what we actually started talking about was the hypothetical music video that is stylistically sound,
Yeah,
but the actual one is
the actual one is
has little style.
stylistically poor. Yeah,
Yeah.
without style, grotesque. Um, I give this a 1 out of 5, uh, because it takes a bad song and then also makes me look at 6ix9ine's face.
um,
What do you
I
give
think it
this?
makes me look at his shirt, which is actually more garish, but
It's maybe.
um,
It's the whole appearance.
I'm actually struggling to call this a one because
This must be worse than the ones we listened to for the last episode.
I mean, worse than comedy? I don't know. Um, man, I don't know. The question is because it has no style, right? But like,
Yeah, none. No
w-
style. It's just everything about it is ugly and trashy and vulgar, and for that reason,
but
it
what's
adds.
trashy about it though? Like besides the cinematography, like if there is no style, then I don't know if you can say that the style is trashy. Besides, are you
No,
just then saying the content is trashy?
the content is trashy, and because it presents that content without style, the content then, or the video then takes on to just become the same thing as its content.
Uh, I'm not sure I can agree with that. It's sort of its own thing. Um, like I'm trying not to include the music, in the video element. I guess
Well, I guess one thing I wanted to ask in regards to this is try and imagine how difficult it would be to photograph 6ix9ine and come out with a well-composed photo. If someone could do that, they would undoubtedly be the best photographer ever.
yeah, that's true. Maybe we should watch his entire music video discography slash videography to see
Oh
if
man.
someone's done that, and then we can contact them. Um, okay, we deciding right now we're allowed to change our ratings as we accrue a larger sample size. But at the moment, I think I have to give this a 2, just because there is some like shock value, I think, in how trashy it is. Um, which makes it like, and it's short too. Yeah,
It's
so I think
short.
I'm gonna go.
I don't
I'm
think
gonna go.
making it short is a good Good explanation. Like if
Well, it's
something is only good because like, oh, at least that terrible experience didn't last that long.
it's I'm just saying it's an appropriate length for shock value. Um, like it's difficult to stay shocking for like a if it was a 7-minute long song, right?
How
But
many times did you watch this video before we recorded this?
4, I think.
4? And it remained shocking each of those 4 times.
Well, yeah, it got less shocking, I guess, but it's not like a masterpiece in shock cinema or anything, but
So
it
then it's
does
not
have
even
some
doing
value.
that well.
Well, it's not doing it in a it's not a masterclass in shock cinema, but it is, like, competent in it, I guess. I mean, not really competent. Not intentionally, so I don't wanna call it competent because that sort of supposes some sort of intention, I think, but it happens to be. Also, this dance that this guy does at, like, yeah, 40 seconds in, man, he probably regrets that.
Let me see this.
Wait,
All right.
it's, like, 42 seconds in. You can already see he begins to regret it before the end of it,
Yeah, yeah.
and now it's just immortalized.
Uh,
Very cool. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna stick with I think I'm gonna stick with a 2.
wow.
Um,
This
do we
was this then equally bad to the Sloop John B music video in your eyes?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Keep in mind that the Sloop John B video is evidence against my preferred interpretation of the song. So
Okay, but
it's
your preferred
almost
interpretation of the song is also wrong.
well, see, I think it's more I think it's better. I think if you just focus on my parts of the song, then the song is better. You just cut out the bad parts.
The comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And the music video is close to a 1 in that sense. It almost ruined the song for me, if not for the fact that the way they sing it to begin with is a little ridiculous. Parts of it is a little ridiculous.
Yes, again,
Um,
this is you taking your nonsensical hatred of comedy and then liking a work of art because you didn't understand that it was trying to be comedic.
um, yeah, selectively interpreting. I is how I'm gonna not a matter of understanding, just interpretation.
All right. Anyways,
Because the falsetto is so good. Anyway, uh, d
this episode's going
do
for a
we
long time already. Let's
do
move
we
on to Soundgarden.
wow, okay, you have the stamina for that. Okay, sure.
Uh, so this I selected this song to pair with it because it is also contains grotesqueries. Um, and so it has strong contrast. Um, but anyways, I mentioned David Lynch briefly when we talked about the last one.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a reason for that, which is this borrows a lot from David Lynch, especially from Blue Velvet. Uh, in 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 David Lynch's films, there is often people's faces being stretched to uncomfortable degrees and so on that actually match with the visual composition. And I would say this matches the way they layer the grotesqueries in this actually have a sense of harmony with each other in this bizarre uh, bizarre exaggeration of the United States, or a certain probably fictional idealized world of the United States to begin with is then twisted in this. I think it is fair to say. Just
Hmm,
just looking at this, the preacher feeding his calf.
yeah. Before you get too sucked into this, I think that this is almost the I just the reason when you asked what do I think the common theme is, I thought it was almost violence in that the lyrics of this song are pretty vague. Um, a little, speaking of Taxi Driver, wanting a black hole sun to wash away the rain, it kind of has that Taxi Driver illusion. of destruction, washing things away. Um,
Yeah.
but the lyrics are sort of vague. They're vague in a more of a rock sense of vague compared to like a pop sense of vague. Um, pop slash pop hip hop. Um, in that, whereas 6ix9ine is just talking about shooting people and popping people and horrifying people. Um, the uh, Soundgarden song is just sort of vague and basically words that are put together because they sound nice together. Um, and the music video sort of transforms that and focuses on the destructive element of the chorus
Uh,
and sort of brings that to light as the focus of the song. And just to get my sort of last piece in, this is my interpretive element. The What I took from this is that it's painting uh, people who are supposedly good and making them ugly and bad. It's suggesting that people who are supposedly happy are having to stretch themselves to seem that way. And so in destroying these people and having the black hole sun rip them up, you're kind of doing something that is a bit contradictory in a sense. Like you're righteously destroying people who seem to be good, or you're you're trying to make. Actually, I won't get into that part, but I think that's sort of that contradiction of like destroying people who seem to be good. That sort of reflects the contradiction in washing away rain, a black hole sun, light, not light, that sort of thing. Uh, what do you
yeah.
think about that interpretation?
I probably should have stopped you sooner, but it sounds like you're
Thank you.
swinging back and forth away from your mic, and your volume is raising and lowering quite dramatically.
Wait, okay, that is because I started walking around
Yeah,
the room.
you
So
should not have done that. Um,
wow. Okay, so I was also stuttering in my delivery, and also I was playing games with the mic, and he just let me go on. That was devastating. Are we gonna keep this in? Yeah, let's just keep
yeah,
this
we're
in.
gonna keep that
Okay.
in. Um,
Well, what part? How much of my interpretation did you hear?
I heard the whole thing. It was just at different
Okay. I
different volume levels.
I was
Um,
really concerned when you said swinging around. I thought you meant in my interpretation, like there was inconsistencies. And then when you just
no,
said that it was my mic having a fit, then I'm fine now. That's perfectly acceptable.
no. I mean, I do have to admit, I was slightly distracted away from the content of your words by that, but I did get what
Okay.
you were saying, and I think that's a yeah, a reasonable way of reading this.
Hmm.
I I would agree. The lyrics are quite vague. I read them over like I think a few times,
Yeah.
and um, and the so I don't really want to talk about the lyrics themselves because I think more so the value comes from how they sing them, which is
Yeah.
rather mournful most of the time until they you get to the more violent chorus. And so I have thought it was like these guys are feel uh or the narrator of the song anyways feels trapped in this kind of like cartoonish world, and they're where things have like an aftertaste of reality to them, but which seems
Mhm.
false overall, and they want to escape from that.
It's very performative, I think, is one way of sort of putting it. Like people are performing to be good and happy, when in reality it's a charade, sort of.
Yeah, and I would also agree that the music video is transformative because it does certainly change the tone of the song versus just listening to the song on its own.
Hmm.
Um, and it does it in an interesting way, I think, because on its own, I think the song is still pretty good, and it's like Like, a certain kind of rock song that is one that I'm not opposed to. Um,
Okay. That's massive praise, wow.
no, no, I actually do like the song.
Okay.
Um, you sound like you don't believe me, but
I
um,
don't know, I don't think it has enough comedy in it. I don't think Frank Zappa and his Hot Rats would, like this song,
yeah,
but
it's not
that's
Zappa, but it is
that's
still good.
besides the point. Okay.
Uh, also, Hot Rats is not a comedic Zappa album. But
I
anyways,
call that his band, but whatever.
um, the so I was more fascinated by just the it does just seem like the guy who directed the music video had been watching a lot of David Lynch up to that point. And
Mhm.
I when I watch David Lynch movies, I get the feeling um that David Lynch feels at home in these worlds that he's created, and no one else who watches those movies does feel that way. They're all like very unusual and uncomfortable, where
Yeah, well,
like these American symbols are like just distorted to the point of almost non-recognition of how you normally think about them.
yeah.
Um, and that is yeah, also the case with this. And but it also does it in a somewhat whimsical way because the computer generated effects in this are are I wouldn't call them
Or
dated because I don't believe they were ever state of the art looking. And I think that is a deliberate uh choice, just like how
including the
in
Black Hole Sun?
yeah, just like how in David Lynch movies he often has deliberately cheesy looking effects just to highlight the unrealness of it all.
Well,
And
yeah,
also
just to
because it's like, yeah, they've got this really tacky green screen behind them when they're
yeah, I was gonna mention the green
performing.
but the green screen is consistent because even when they show, like, images of the suburban town, the sky is also green screen behind them. I mean, I think the whole town is even a green screen, but yeah, they're not definitely not on set of a suburban town. Like if you look at around just after 2 minutes, like 2 minutes and 2 seconds, when the religious people are like beckoning on the end,
Yeah,
like they're definitely not in the same place as where those trees are. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
and
and a lot of what do you call that? Like
talk about the
tilting almost?
chemistry.
Like at 2:13, what would you call that image where the beekeeper's on the ground and like
Oh,
it's like the whole house?
yeah, that's I call it a Dutch angle normally.
Is that just the Dutch angle? I thought
Oh,
it's like a
oh
Dutch
yeah,
angle and also something's yeah, I don't know what you would call that. I feel like it happens at another point too.
yeah. The camera
Um,
is not
it's like
level with it. It's
focus.
looking up, and
Yeah, same with the girl with the braces, like a lot of shots of her sort of on a yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I don't know.
So
But
I need to ask you, which of the people or beings in this is your favorite one?
um well, see, okay, here, let me wind this into my aesthetic evaluation of the video. I think the goal of this is to conjure up your hatred, your misanthropy? Yes, for the average person, and just make you hate them, and then you have your cathartic moment when, visually speaking, the black hole sun wipes them all away. And so, for me, aesthetically speaking, the characters who I most enjoy are the ones who I hate the most, who are going to be probably the children torturing the animals, and also, maybe, Isaac Asimov, being a sheep in front of the TV. Very strange inclusion. Um, but, actually, I don't hate him that much, but I
I
guess,
like the woman who's having her face licked by the dog. That would have
um,
such a that almost zoophilic undercurrent to it. Is
yeah, the, woman watching, the bodybuilders also.
yeah, and she's also got some kind of electronic masturbator happening
Yeah,
the
I
whole
didn't
time.
wanna comment on that. I think that might be the most explicit part of all these videos that we've watched so far.
Yeah, so then this is one of the questions which we promised to answer in regards to the videos. Should this have had more semi-nude women in it? 'Cause
Um,
it's got the one with the weird tongue. They then photographed the little girl eating ice cream dribbling out of her mouth, so it looks like semen. Um,
so is that the goal?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I hope that's code. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that
and
part is actually really gross. No, this part had just the right amount. I like the fully clothed eroticism. That's sort of necessary to make this even more sort of stifled and phony, I think, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
even the bodybuilder man is like made to look as gross as possible. Like he's literally orange, like he's turkey colored. And he's also like out of focus in the foreground.
yeah.
Also, okay, here's the shot that I was talking about. Like at 135 slash like 130 and like for a few seconds after that, like that shot of the girl skipping rope
Oh,
is
yeah. This is
not
like,
just on
such
an
a
angle, it's
strange
like
angle.
digitally altered, I think, somehow, or warped.
Yeah, that well, it's probably again, she's in front of a green screen background that they
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so just to as we're thinking about this, talking about this, I was thinking, what's my aesthetic theory then? And I think I'm gonna have to side with Aristotle and say that good art is cathartic. But
okay,
to avoid reducing that to like appeal to popularity, where it's like, oh, the best art is just cathartic for the most amount of people or something, I think you can also talk about an idealized catharsis, where it's like if if you had like the ideal aesthetic perceiver, or like if you had the ideal society, what would people find cathartic still? And that would probably, because that seemingly would speak to the heart of the human condition or something like that.
alright.
Um,
I guess
and not to go on a tangent, but I just want to say that I think my view of catharsis and relatability also sort of explains a bit better why commenting on the human experience is powerful and aesthetically valuable. Just putting that out there. Maybe we shouldn't dive into that. But that's why I'm going to say this video I think is very good because it takes a song that is a little obscure, a little unclear, and makes it specific and turns both the video and the song into something cathartic by sort of riling up your hatred for these phony people, for these snakes, I guess you could say, if you're using the lyrics. And then that sort of motivates the wish for the black hole sun.
okay. Um, I feel like if I start challenging your aesthetic theory, we'll be here for another hour and a bit. So
Probably.
so I'm not gonna do that.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say I don't know how we would find out about this ideal human
You need to
society.
read The Republic, I think.
I have read The Republic, but is
I'm
that
I'm
the
just saying
ideal?
that everyone would have to do that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Everyone would have to read The Republic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but Aristotle didn't agree with Plato on that.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but I'm combining the 2 into a hybrid view.
Okay,
It's I'm thinking of the platonic human and what their experience with catharsis would be.
okay.
But
Um,
that's sort of I'm saying that you could talk about both. You can also just talk about what people in real life find cathartic, and I think this is something that they would.
so I also think this music video is very good, and I think I think one of the most important parts of art is getting actual specifics and details in there. Like even
Mm,
pragmatically, I can't imagine that you would if something is overly vague, you just wouldn't think or feel anything about it.
mhm.
Um, and so this video does add in many disconcerting and uncomfortable specifics that are still very intentionally and I think beautifully composed in this um, grotesque vision where all these grotesqueries are layered on top of each other harmoniously.
Yeah, one of my favorite shots, I think, is at 210 when you have the bees over top of the camera, and then the focus racks, and
And you
into
see the
focus
dead
comes
beekeeper.
the unconscious or dead beekeeper, which I think also goes with, like, the sort of irony of, like, wanting to destroy these supposedly good people. You have the supposedly righteous beekeeper who's really, like, their captor, and they strike back at him or something, which is seems sort of in theme. And I also really like although I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to, if it sort of represents that theme or it's just the general misanthropy going on, but the shot of the uh, doll getting baked on the barbecue or I guess barbecued on the barbecues is also really pleasing.
Yeah.
That one's just right after like 2:30.
Yeah. Also at like 2:20.
Yeah.
Um
So what's it going to be then? I guess or can we move on to ratings?
yes, I think we've talked about this one in a much more mercifully brief amount of time. Um, but anyways, I
Yeah.
give this video 5 out of 5.
Oh, okay.
Um
I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 5 too. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Any comments on that?
um I think like using our criteria of it actually adds something crucial to the song and you would show it to someone who's even not really a fan of the song. I think definitely I'd say watch
Yeah.
this music video.
I think it makes I don't think it stands on its own as something necessarily like spectacular, but because it makes the song better, someone who might not like the song originally might come to like it after the video. So I think that's even that is enough to secure it a 5 status in my opinion.
All right.
Sweet. So is this the point where I do the outro?
Yes, I think
No,
it's time
I'm
for
I'm I'm kidding. I
so
actually have a smooth outro. Oh, unless you wanna carry it away.
oh, I was just gonna say, next time. Are you gonna say what we're doing next time in
Oh,
your
yeah,
outro?
yeah, see, this
Okay,
is it. See, we've
take it
we've
away.
turned what was supposed to be a smooth outro, we've then made it awkward again by fumbling over who's gonna do it. Uh, but I will now use this outro segment to state that next week, I think we're gonna return to the chronology, doing this chronologically, and we're gonna go back to the Beatles, A Day in the Life, then the Beatles knockoffs, the Monkees, for I'm a Believer, and then our favorite Rolling Stones material, 2000 Light Years from Home, off of their Satanic Majesty's request. I'm expecting a lot of drugs in that video too.
I didn't know that that one like that album is so rushed. It felt like it was like a school assignment they completed the night before. I didn't realize they actually had time to make a music video for it.
I I mean, maybe it was an additional requirement of the assignment. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm hoping that there is going to be some shenanigans. But we'll see. And until then,
Yeah.
toodaloo.
Uh, until next time. Thanks for listening.
Nice.